Misterland, the land of magic. Come on and sing. Mr. Fields and Mr. Trees, Mr. Birds and Mr. Bees, Mr. See all the Mr. Men, the men who live there. It's Mr. Time. It really is a pantomime.
Mr. Cheeky. Mr. Greedy was sitting down at his kitchen table having breakfast. Cornflakes, toast, eggs, butter, marmalade, milk, sugar, more toast, when there was a knock at the door. As he opened it, somebody barged past him. That somebody sat down and poured some of Mr. Greedy's cornflakes into Mr. Greedy's bowl. Mr. Greedy didn't know what to say. The somebody ate the cornflakes. Then the somebody ate the toast, the eggs, the butter, the marmalade, milk and sugar, and got up to go. "Thanks, Tubby," laughed the somebody as he walked out the door. Mr. Greedy just couldn't believe what had happened. His breakfast, all gone! Now, you would have to agree that somebody who would do that would have to be very cheeky. The cheekiest somebody in the world. Mr. Cheeky. Mr. Cheeky walked down the lane from Mr. Greedy's house with a wide grin on his face. He was enjoying himself, and he continued to enjoy himself for the rest of the day. Further along the lane, Mr. Cheeky met little Miss Neat, who was painting her fence. "Do you want to do some painting?" asked little Miss Neat. Mr. Cheeky picked up a spare paintbrush and painted over little Miss Neat's glasses. "Thanks, Four Eyes," he laughed. Little Miss Neat was lost for words. Just outside town, Mr. Cheeky met Mr. Nosy. Mr. Nosy had hurt the end of his nose. "Could you help me bandage my nose?" he asked. "Do it yourself, Big Nose," laughed Mr. Cheeky. Mr. Nosy was lost for words. Mr. Cheeky walked into town and went into the baker's. He walked straight to the front of the queue. "Excuse me," said Mr. Small, who was next in line. "There's a queue here." "And I'm at the front of it, Shorty," laughed Mr. Cheeky and stuck his tongue out. Mr. Small was lost for words. Mr. Cheeky walked out feeling very pleased with himself. Mr. Muddle asked him for directions to the greengrocer to buy some toothpaste. Mr. Cheeky told him to get lost, and Mr. Muddle never did. That evening, while out for a walk, little Miss Neat met Mr. Greedy and Mr. Muddle. "Mr. Cheeky needs to be taught a lesson," said little Miss Neat. "I agree," said Mr. Greedy. "I disagree," said Mr. Muddle, who was as muddled as usual. "And I know just the person to teach him that lesson," said little Miss Neat. Very early the next morning, Mr. Cheeky was awoken by a knock at the door. It was little Miss Bossy. "I've come to stay," announced little Miss Bossy. "But," began Mr. Cheeky. "No buts, and I like my breakfast right away," ordered little Miss Bossy. "Get it yourself," said Mr. Cheeky. "Wrong! Breakfast now, please," yelled little Miss Bossy. Mr. Cheeky was lost for words. Mr. Cheeky was so stunned that he actually did as he was told. After breakfast, he decided to go for a walk. He wasn't enjoying little Miss Bossy's company very much. "Don't forget the washing up!" cried little Miss Bossy. "Do it yourself," said Mr. Cheeky. "Wrong! Washing up! Now, please!" ordered little Miss Bossy. Mr. Cheeky washed up. After washing up, Mr. Cheeky tried to creep out through the back door. "Where do you think you're going?" cried little Miss Bossy. "The lawn needs cutting," she said. "Cut it yourself," said Mr. Cheeky. "Run! Lawn! Cut! Now, please!" ordered little Miss Bossy. Mr. Cheeky cut the lawn. And so it continued all week long. Every time Mr. Cheeky opened his mouth or tried to sneak away, there was little Miss Bossy shouting, "Wrong! Wrong! Wrong!" At the end of a very tiring week, it was a very miserable Mr. Cheeky who answered the door when Mr. Greedy and little Miss Neat visited. It was also a very polite Mr. Cheeky. He made them tea, he offered them biscuits, Mr. Greedy ate 5, and he didn't call Mr. Greedy Tubby, and he didn't call little Miss Neat Four Eyes. "Well, I think it's worked," announced little Miss Neat. "He's a changed person," agreed Mr. Greedy. "I think you can go home now, little Miss Bossy." "That's a shame," she replied. "I was really enjoying myself." Mr. Cheeky showed them to the door. "And remember," said little Miss Bossy, "any more of your cheek, and I shall be round to stay again." Mr. Cheeky closed the door and then very softly under his breath said, "Bossy boots." The door sprang open. "That's right!" cried little Miss Bossy and went home chuckling to herself.
Go to Mr. Land, the land of magic.